Hey guys! I promised my Dragon Age fans something good this week, and I'm delivering. When I first started thinking about doing audiobook versions of my novels, I got the idea to do this almost simultaneously. I was playing another game of Inquisition, and picked up the familiar Codex, Hightown, and thought, man, this is content gold right here. I'm going to apologize ahead of time if I pronounce anything wrong. I've never heard a lot of these names said out loud, and so I'm just winging it. It's also going to take me a few videos to get through the whole story, but we'll see how far I can get before my voice gets hoarse. So without more delay, I'm going to be reading Varric Tethris's book, Hightown, straight from the Codex. Chapter 1. They say coin never sleeps, but anyone who's walked the patrol of Hightown Market at midnight might disagree. The pickpockets and confidence men head to the taverns at dusk. The dwarven businessmen and nobles go back to their tiny palaces to fret over the ways they got cheated, and the market falls silent. Donna knew every angle of the market with his eyes closed. 20 years of patrols had etched it into him so that he walked that beat even in his dreams. The recruit, Javelin, was another story. The ring of steel striking stone told Donna that the kid had stumbled into a column again. His new armor would be full of dents by sunrise. Torches would make this easier. The sound of Javelin hauling himself off the pavement was like a tinker's cart crashing. Torches make you night blind. You'll adjust. Donna crossed the square to help the kid to his feet. A breeze scurried across the plaza, sending the banners and pennants shivering and carrying an old familiar scent. Donna stopped in his tracks. Something's wrong. His voice was low, warning. He peered into the dark up at the mezzanine just above them. Follow me. Be ready for trouble. The two guards climbed the dark stairs, and there, in a puddle of shadow, found the body. Gold-trimmed, satin glittered through the blood. Get the captain, Donna sighed. We've got a dead magistrate. Chapter 2. Magistrate Dunwald's butler had the air of a man who had never risen before dawn in his life. He stared down his nose at Donna and his partner Javelin, as if he were on some lofty balcony above them instead of standing in the parlor in his dressing gown. The magistrate is indisposed. This can wait until a reasonable hour. He gestured for the guards to see themselves out. The magistrate is dead, Donna corrected him. Wake the household. As the butler left, Javelin shifted uneasily in his new armor. Shouldn't the captain be here? You want to go back to the barracks? Be my guest, Donna said with a shrug, only half listening as he studied the collection displayed in the room. A dozen ancient swords lay nestled in display cases. Protected from dust and prying fingers, he moved to lift the lid of the nearest one. Javelin started to protest, but then the doors opened. She had eyes the color of topaz and dark hair that fell across her brow like sword strokes. She strolled into the parlor with such dignified elegance that Donna didn't realize for several minutes that she was clad in a housecoat and not a ball gown. You have news about my husband? What's Seamus done this time? Forget to pay his bill at the Rose? She seated herself and indicated the guards to do the same. Donna nodded at the recruit to speak up. Javelin started. No, Lady Dunwald, actually. She interrupted him with a wave. Marielle, please. Lady Marielle, your husband has been murdered, Donna took over for the flustered recruit. When did you see him last? Marielle started at him, her jewel-colored eyes wide, and her voice cracked on. Murdered? Seamus? But a heartbeat, maybe two, passed, and she again became the perfect picture of noble grace. I saw him at dinner, she answered in a tone anyone might use to comment on the weather. He left before dusk. He said he was going to play Wicked Grace with the Comte de Fave. Do you know of anyone who might have wanted him dead? Javelin asked softly. People want magistrates dead on principle, she gave a wry smile, but her voice grew pained. Criminals, political rivals, even people in his district who disagree with him. She drifted off, lost in thought, and then turned to Donna, eyes blazing. A week ago, a letter came. Vague threats. I thought it was nothing, but it upset Seamus. Who sent it? Donna asked. It wasn't signed, but the seal was 6 crossed swords. Chapter 3. For the second time in what was becoming a very long night, Donna and his partner Javelin found themselves knocking on a nobleman's door. It was still hours before dawn, the sky turning gray around the edges. The steel of Donna's gauntlets clanged against the door. Once, twice, no answer. He sighed, looking up at the dark windows of the mansion. He was getting too old for this shit. Maybe he's out, Javelin offered. The recruit was nervous. In the guard a week and barely able to walk through Hightown. Too green for a murder case. He's hiding. Look up, Donna pointed. He's shuttered all the windows. There hasn't been a storm in months. He pounded on the door again, louder. "We should get the captain." Javelin shifted and squirmed under his heavy shoulder plates. Donna had forgotten how badly new guard armor fit. He started to tell the kid where to get it adjusted, and the door swung open. "Come inside, quickly!" A man rushed them inside and through the house. Every room was dark. No moonlight made it through the shuttered windows. No candles flickered. Their way was lit only by a hooded lantern in the hands of their host. He stopped once they had reached a windowless inside room, where he closed and bolted the door behind him. "Comte de Fave?" Donna guessed. The man nodded. In the dim lantern light, Donna could see that he was dressed in a gaudy brocade doublet, but had thrown a chainmail shirt over it. He wore the helmet from an obviously ceremonial armor set, slightly askew on his head. "I know why you're here," the Comte whispered. "Dunwald." Donna's voice was flat. "Did you kill him, your lordship?" "This is bigger than a murder," the Comte hissed, his eyes flicking to the door. "Dunwald threw the attention of great powers. When dragons do battle, guardsmen, mortal men can only take cover. Drop the case. Don't draw their gaze." Chapter 4. Donna Brankovic didn't stand on ceremony. He strode through the barracks and slammed open the door to the captain's office without so much as a nod to the guards as he passed. Just barely dawn, and already Captain Hendelin was buried behind a mountain of paperwork taller than the Vinmarks. All Donna could see of the captain was her fiery hair and an angry gaze that had stopped more than one pickpocket mid-grift. "Captain, I need a warrant for the Comte de Fave." Even as the words left his lips, Donna knew they were a mistake. The captain rose to her feet. "Brankovic?" The way she spoke his name was like a portcullis slamming shut. "Where's my report on the Hightown market body?" It was the kind of question you might ask a truant child, the kind where you already knew the answer and just wanted to see someone squirm in guilt. "I'll file it after." "You'll file it now, guardsman." She stepped out from behind the desk. "We follow procedure in my barracks. A magistrate was dead. Murdered on my watch, Captain." Donna's voice was heated. He could never keep his temper in her presence. "I'm not letting the killer get away." "You left the scene without a thorough search of the market." Hendelin began pacing, her voice like cold steel. "You harassed a magistrate's widow, and you practically broke down a comp's door." She turned to glare at him. "All before dawn. If you want a warrant, you damned well better have hard evidence to justify it." "I know that de Fave isn't telling us everything," Donna insisted. "Let me bring him in and—" "Forget it." She crossed back to her chair. "You've got nothing. You're not arresting a man on a feeling, Brankovic." "Captain," he protested. From behind her paperwork, the captain waved for him to be silent. "You're 2 weeks from retirement, guardsman. You want to stay in the ranks long enough to get pensioned? You follow procedure. Find me evidence and quit wasting my time. Dismissed." Chapter 5. Javelin was waiting outside the captain's office when Donna Brankovic slunk out, defeated. "We're not getting a warrant, are we?" Javelin looked almost relieved. "No." Donna met his partner's eyes. The kid was barely 20 and looked like he'd walked straight to the Kirkwall barracks from somebody's potato farm. Taller and broader than the other guards, Javelin slouched as if he didn't know how to fit into his own limbs, as if he thought he should be smaller. Hunched over in his brand new, too large armor, he looked like a child playing at being a guard. He was too green for a murder investigation. "Maybe it's for the best," Javelin said, almost speaking Donna's thought out loud. "You're on your way out of the guard, and I'm—" He trailed off, then sighed. "Questioning nobles in the middle of the night wasn't covered in training." Donna glared at the kid. "I'm a city guard. And so are you, recruit. Nobody gets away with murder while we're on duty." Javelin stood a little straighter. "What do we do then?" "The captain wants proof," Donna smiled. "We bring her proof." Chapter 6. The estates of Hightown fall into 3 types. The dwarven palaces in their enclave, huddled around their counterfeit paragon statues for shelter against the onslaught of human ideas that surround them. The foreign quarter, where the wealthiest Orlesian and Antivan merchants stay during their twice-yearly visits to criticize the ship captains, and shop clerks, and accountants in their employ, and the noble mansions, where families who can trace their lineage back to Orlesian conquerors and to Vinter landlords perch to look down on the rabble of ordinary folk scurrying at their feet. But whoever they belong to, all of the Hightown estates have 2 things in common: a showy front entrance used when the occupants want to be seen, and a hidden back way when they don't. The servant's door to the Comte de Favre's mansion was in an alley hidden by overgrown topiaries. Don and Brankovic picked the lock while his partner Javelin kept an uneasy lookout. They had left their armor at the barracks, but even in civilian clothes, the recruit managed to look like he was wearing an older brother's hand-me-downs. "I don't think this is what the captain meant when she said to get evidence," he muttered. The lock clicked, and Donna gently pushed it open. Only a few slivers of light slid through the shuttered windows. Silence hung in the air like a cheap tapestry. Donna and Javelin crept through the dark rooms, alert for any signs of servants, but nothing broke the eerie quiet, except their footsteps. In fact, there was no sign that anyone had been in the house at all until they found the room whose door had been torn from its hinges. Inside, the Comte lay in a pool of blood, one hand clutching a loaded crossbow, a dagger hilt protruding from his back. Chapter 7. Don and Brankovic searched Comte de Favre's office. The Comte lay dead, murdered while armed and barricaded inside his own home. The servants' rooms were all empty, and from the pulled-out drawers and abandoned trunks, they had been sent away in a hurry. The Comte had clearly expected trouble, and trouble had come to call. The Comte kept all of his letters. Decades of correspondence sorted by, apparently, kingdom of origin filled his writing desk. Donna rummaged through them, looking for darker ink, fresher pages, anything that might indicate that it was recent. And then came the shattering sound of someone kicking in the front door. "Hey, milord Fancy Pants! Get your ass down here!" Javelin and Donna ran for the foyer. A woman stood over the splintered door, her eyes glittering brighter than the daggers in her hands. "You there!" she snapped at the guardsman. "Where's the Comte de Full of it? We need to have some words. One of them will be coin, and another will be now." "Kirkwall Guard!" Donna barked back at her. "This is a crime scene. Identify yourself." "Guards, are you?" she smirked, squinting up into the dark towards him. "No suits of armor outside. Man poking around a noble's house in the dark. This does look like a crime scene." Donna didn't flinch. "Your name?" "Belladonna, Captain Belladonna of the Dragon's Jewels." She executed a florid bow that somehow managed to be insulting. "Where's the damned Comte?" "He's dead," Donna said, watching her reaction. "You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" She cracked a wry smile. "Trust me, sweet thing. If I were going to kill him, I'd have waited until he paid me first." "What was your business with the Comte?" Javelin spoke up, startling Donna. He'd almost forgotten his partner was there. "Cargo transport," she glowered at the recruit. "He hired me to deliver some antiques, and I've been sitting at anchor for a fortnight without being paid." She peered up into the dark balconies overhanging the foyer and shouted, "Anybody here? You want this rubbish? Come to the docks tonight and pay me 50 sovereigns for it. Otherwise, I'm dumping it in the sea." With that, she turned on her heel and strode away. Chapter 8. Don and Brankovic left his partner Javelin at the barracks. The recruit was even more jittery after their run-in with Captain Belladonna, and although Don himself was starting to feel his limbs weighed down and aching after such a long shift, he finally had the scent of something in this case. He wouldn't let it get away. The city of Kirkwall has a legacy of collectors. It was built in ancient times by Tevinters who collected suffering as if it were rare coins, and they passed on their obsession with obsession to future generations. On any street from Darktown to the Viscount's Keep, you can always find someone who will always buy tapestries, or who has every known spoon made in Navarra, or someone who hoards odd bits and scraps of historical knowledge like it's their grandmother's crockery, which is how he found himself knocking on a brightly painted door in the alienage. "Oh, guardsman! What a nice surprise! Nobody's been mugged, have they?" The elf beamed up at him. She had green eyes so wide they barely fit in her face, and she seemed to be made of nothing but elbows and knees. "No muggings today, Maisie." Donnan had to duck his head slightly to get through the door. "I have something you might be interested in." He handed her the letter the magistrate's wife had given him the night before. "Well, this doesn't look very interesting at all." Maisie frowned, disappointed. "What you have claimed belongs to greater powers you will answer to us? That's a lot of rubbish." "Not that. Look at the back." She flipped the letter over and cooed as if she'd found a lost puppy. "Oh, just look at you. You're just perfect." "Maisie," Donnan spoke in a loud, firm voice, trying to remind her he was still in the room. "Whose seal is that?" "Oh, it's the executor's, of course." Maisie peered excitedly at the wax seal, holding it up to the window for better light. "I should have guessed it from the silly greater powers nonsense. There's only been one example, on the letter claiming responsibility for the assassination of Queen Magistrate in 599, and this one is so much better. Just look at that imprint." "Any idea how I'd contact these executors?" Donnan asked. "Oh, they're not real, of course. Everybody knows that." And that's going to be it for part 1. I managed to fit 8 chapters in under 15 minutes, so that's not too bad. I have to say I had a lot of fun with this and coming up with all the voices. And it's actually a really fun pastime for me to give voices to characters, and I used to do it a lot with old RPGs. Especially when I had someone over who was otherwise bored because I was playing a game. It just used to make things more interesting. I've already completed the first audio chapter for my Legionnaires story as well. And after doing this today, working on some more of that would definitely be fun. The audio chapters are a Patreon perk, so if you're interested in hearing me read my own books, then go sign up. The link is down below in the info, and I'm going to flash it on the screen for you too. Pledging support on my Patreon is incredibly helpful in motivating me to keep creating all of this content. Believe it or not, it takes a lot of time and effort to put these videos together, and that's why I am so thankful for these awesome people who have already assisted my creations by pledging on Patreon. I will definitely work on getting the second part of Varric's book out, though. Let me know what you guys thought of it. Was it any good? I'll admit, I've never read the entire book in the game. I always find an out-of-order chapter and read it. So it's a first for me to see every single chapter in order. It's also fun to compare the characters to the DA2 characters. Like, Belladonna seems very obviously to be Isabella, and Maisie, if I recall, Varric used to call Meryl Daisy. And with the mention of those big green eyes, it's definitely got to be her. Hendelin is obviously Evelyn too. So I'll get to working on that soon, as well as putting together anything I feel is worthwhile from patch 6. Is there anything new that anyone has found that's worth taking a look at in particular? I haven't come across any new scenes outside of Grimforge yet, but then I haven't had a chance to really do a huge variety of things yet. Anyway, enough rambling. Until next time, I'll see you guys later.